Welcome, everyone. We're so happy to see you as you're joining us for the chorus returns to the stage tonight. My name is Jennifer White with the Portage Park District, and it's the Portage Park District's pleasure to bring you Lisa Rainsong this evening. She is one of my favorite naturalists to listen to and learn from. Dr. Lisa Rainsong is a professional musician, an educator, and a naturalist, and she studies the songs of birds and amphibians and insects of Northeast Ohio and teaches other people not only how to identify them, but also how to listen for their context and their interactions. And I love this quote that Lisa shares on her website. The more we hear of our natural world, the more deeply we will desire to protect its musicians and concert halls. And so we are just getting into that time of year when the chorus is returning to the stage, so to speak. And so, Lisa, I'm grateful for you being here and sharing with our park friends. And I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you. And I would like you to imagine yesterday. Remember when it was so warm? That was when spring was first saying, okay, I'm taking over. It's going to take me a little while, but I'm taking over. But we know that spring in Northeast Ohio, it's like this. It's like what it is tonight. It's like what it'll be tomorrow, as well as like what it was yesterday. You've seen these sad scenes before at your feeders, I'm sure. You'll see it probably tomorrow morning too, but it won't last. We've got our first grackle. He already came back. He was a little bit early. He's going to be looking like this tomorrow morning, that's for sure. And do your blackbirds come back in late February? Redwings, grackles? I bet they probably do. And they're always a little bit earlier than perhaps they could be. And they sometimes have regrets. I think that this one right here looks like he has serious regrets. But think of the robins. You may think the robins left, but they didn't really leave. They form large flocks, and certainly up by me, I'm in Cleveland, we've had robins all winter long, and while they won't do full-fledged songs, they'll do a lot of this chattering back and forth, and you'll find them in anything that's got berries. Up along the lakeshore, I can see 100 of them together forming flocks. So they're not going to sing just yet, but they're here and we're going to notice them. Although sometimes they too are kind of wondering why they didn't go south. This bird looks tough. You know this one. This is the house finch. Birds start singing early because they go by the light, not by the temperature, not by the snow, nothing. I have recorded house finches when there's 8 inches of snow. Why is this? Do you know the story of the house finches? In case you don't, they were not native to this part of the country. They're a southwestern bird. That bird right there should be singing from a cactus. But instead, they were being sold by the pet trade in New York City as Hollywood finches, they were called. What was house finches? And they had been captured, and they were being just sold in these pet stores. Except in 1940, there was gonna be a raid, and the pet store owners got wind of it, and they thought, oh my God, we gotta get rid of these finches. So they did, on Long Island. Except they didn't all die. Some of them toughed it out. And they started to breed, and slowly they started expanding west. And the first record of a house finch in Ohio was, I believe, at Holden Arboretum in 1964. And certainly by early 70s, we were starting to see them here. And by mid-70s, my mother, who was living in a mobile home park in Elyria, said, "Dear, we have all these purple finches. We didn't used to have purple finches." It's like, purple finches are a forest bird. What are you seeing? And then I realized it was the house finches. They have now spread all the way west, and in some places they're actually touching the original range of the house finch. So they have been incredible, and they're doing really well up here. Here's Holden Arboretum, early February. Snow belt. Look at all this snow. This is what it sounded like. The house finches were already singing. In fact, oftentimes they're the first bird that I hear. Hear that woodpecker drumming in the background? That's their song. Their song is not their calls, it's their drumming. That's their song. Black-capped chickadees, have you heard any yet? I've just heard a little bit of chickadee song so far, but they're starting. That cheerful two-note song. Usually I would have to try to sing this like 2 octaves down. This is the sonogram. Da-dum. I can't sing that high. I can only do da-dum. But up here, on my piano, way up there, that's their song. Doesn't it look like he's looking up at his own sonogram? Here's another one. It's always just 2 notes. We'll eventually get Carolina chickadees moving all the way up here, but they're not here just yet. I keep checking. They have confrontations, and they only have 2 notes. So what do? You can hear this by early March. You'll have one chickadee saying da-dum, and the other one says da-dum, bottom, bottom, back and forth, back and forth. Listen. That's 2 chickadees. Here's one, here's the other. And the second one is taking the lower note and making it his higher note. That's what they do when they're fairly close but not right on top of each other. But if they get too close and it really gets serious, they're going to be at the same pitches. Back and forth, back and forth. I hear this all over Northeast Ohio. If you start listening in March, you're going to hear that too. Our nuthatches are singing, our white-breasted nuthatches. They live in the great big pin oak right next to this house in Cleveland Heights. So maybe you've heard them already. That's their little call notes. That's yet another sound you can listen for. Cardinals are singing. I've heard them. Have you heard yours yet? I know you can't tell me directly, but we'll talk afterward. Here's a sonogram that shows you one of the many songs. Here is whit, whit, cheer, whit, 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 whit. And there's a whit, cheer at the end. Cardinals have a repertoire. They have a number of different songs, and they can switch between them, and they have various reasons for doing that. Each cardinal will have multiple songs, and they'll switch in response to another male. So one of them will sing, and another in the distance will match that song. Or maybe you can hear there was another one back there matching a little ways away. Listen to that. He's changing his song right there. I happen to just catch that in my recording. He's doing a new song, and the other male's going to have to answer, because the females are going to judge these males based on their songs, because the songs will say something about their health and their territories. Look at her. She is judging. They are auditioning for her, and they better be good. And she can sing too. It took me years to actually get a recording of one of them singing, because they're usually in the shrubs and you can't see them because they don't want to call attention to where they're going to be nesting. All those little chip notes, those are the male and female chipping to each other. And then she eventually is going to sing to him. That's her. That's her singing. He's up high in a nearby tree. And then he'll later sing back to her. Here's another song. I haven't heard my first mourning dove yet, but I bet I will soon. I better. February's almost over. Here's the sonogram. Look how it matches what you hear. If we were in person, I'd have you sing. Because that pitch pitch is lower than almost all the other bird songs. It's right where I can sing and where you can sing too. Men, you would have to embrace your inner falsetto, which maybe you haven't done for a while. But if you did, you'd be able to sing there too. The chickadees and the titmouse, no way. Now that's just a downy talking. Even that is a call. Keep listening. That is the equivalent of a woodpecker's song. And you know, that's why these woodpeckers sometimes really like to get by a downspout or something like that. They want something that's going to make a big noise to make it sound like they're a big, important bird. And both the males and the females can drum. This was very fortunate on my part to see a feeder that had the male on this side and the female on that side. The difference is the little red spot up here. Now, these folks are really vocal. Male with his all red head. Female red, gray, red. They're both equal size and they're very feisty. What you're hearing here actually is a male is trying to raid the female's acorn stash, and she's not having it. She's going to drive him out of there, and she succeeded too. Oh, by the way, here's the red belly. We don't see that very often. Still, even that quirr, quirr, quirr sound, those are still just calls. Those are conversational. But they're not the actual song, because the song is the drumming. Again, here's his red head, and here's her red, gray, and red here. Goldfinches are here. You know what? I had to teach my classes on Zoom for the past 5 weeks or so. We just went back in person this week. So while I was sitting right here on Zoom, hour after hour, day after day, I have a little feeder right here. I had so many goldfinches, and they all look like this. So if you didn't know that they don't always look bright yellow, you might not know who they are. But this is what the goldfinches look like right now outside the window. This is what they'll look like fairly soon. And this is what they look like in between. So here you can see this one's got some yellow coming in, but still has a lot of the white. Sometimes it's hard to tell, though, if you're hearing a goldfinch or a house finch. I can't give you a surefire way of how to learn these, but here's what I'd suggest. See, here's the inherent problem. Whoops. This is the sonogram for the goldfinch, and here's the one for the house finch. And they look so similar, and they sound so similar. This is not a beginner's level comparison. This is a graduate level comparison. You'd probably be best off. See, we just switched from the goldfinch to the house finch. You couldn't even tell, I bet. What you would need to do is try to watch until you really got good at it. Don't start here. Start with some of the other birds. You could start with this one. You know, some of them already probably showed up with this last warm front, but I bet the next warm front is going to bring a whole bunch of these folks up here. Not only the red wings, but all of them. This is the Holden Arboretum, and it was the very end of February, right behind the visitor center, where there's a wet area that they like. I just stood there with my microphone. All these folks were singing. To me, that is what spring sounds like. This is spring. And it's so triumphant, it's so glorious. We've got the grackle with their beautiful iridescent heads. Now their songs may not be melodious to our ears, but the females think it's just fine. Now cowbirds, I'm going to speak on their behalf for a minute here. They have amazing songs. The frequencies go up so high, higher than what we can really perceive. And the glub, glub, glub sounds like the water when it first starts to thaw in a stream. Now, I just want to remind everybody that, yes, it's a problem for some of our birds, but they are a native species. And they're not a problem because of themselves. They're a problem because of the conditions that humans created. So it's not their fault. It's a problem when they're taking over other birds' nests. But they originally were following the buffalo, and you know what happened to them. They were in the prairies that have been, much of that area has been all plowed up. And then what did humans do? We opened up logging roads into the woods so they could get in there. They didn't used to even be in there, but forest fragmentation opened the door for them. And they just said, well, okay, I guess this is what we have to work with. They didn't know. It's not like they're inherently bad. But yes, it creates problems for birds like bluebirds. Now here, this is like the signature of spring. Don't you think bellicose is a really good name for them? With all the different sounds they make, I think all of them, from their screams and everything else, they all sound like they're just screaming obscenities, frankly. And if you've ever had them dive bomb you, you know that's kind of appropriate. I was setting up a transect once to do a singing insect survey in Geauga County. It was too close to where the red-winged blackbirds thought I should be. I had to move my transect. I couldn't even have my stakes there because they would just all come after me saying all these things. But I love them. I adore them. So as you're listening to those red-winged blackbirds, when the things are first starting to thaw out in the ponds and the wetlands, still pretty early, that's not all you're going to hear. Keep listening and you'll hear. Doesn't it make you happy when you first hear the first spring peepers? So many people feel really happy when they first hear the peepers in the spring. And look at him. This one looks like it's saying, you know, you're just so full of yourself. Just get out of my way. This is the vocal pouch. This is where they're creating those sounds. And you know how loud they are. You know you're going to need hearing protection if you go in the wetland in the mid-March or so. Have you tried to find them? They're not so easy to find because they're about the size of a fingernail or a thumbnail. Crucifer, because of the X or cross on the back, that's where they get that Latin name. Look for that, because there's other frogs like the western chorus frog that are small too. But if you see this X, then you know for sure it's spring peeper. This is a female. She's got eggs, and that's why she looks kind of round like that. Here's a male sitting up in the grasses. But look, this is just a leaf. And look how tiny she is. If I do a program with where I'm looking for amphibians with people, I'll look to see if there's any kids. And if there's any kids, I'll just put them on that. I'll give them that assignment because they're right down there anyway. And they'll find them. They'll find them faster than grown-ups ever will. Let's keep walking, though, back into the woods. You know who this is, right? I bet a lot of you do. Tufted titmouse? It doesn't matter that everything is still brown. There's all this music already. Look at him. So beautiful. I call this theme and variations because titmice have a lot of different songs. They have a good-sized repertoire. All their songs are short and repetitious, but they have a bunch of them. And they're all loud, too. This is the one that we recognize really easily. Way in the background, you might hear a toad. Listen for everything that goes on around them. That's such a good spring song. Now, have you ever heard them do this one? It sounds really hoarse. It sounds like a lounge singer who's been working in the bars for too long, trying to sing over the top of all the drunks carrying on. But no, that's just one possible song. But you know what? I only hear it, probably like about April or so. March, April. I don't hear it later on when they're singing. So let's just take a listen to what they can do. Okay, he's singing that horse song. Let him do that for a little bit. But he could switch right back to the perfectly clear song in a heartbeat. You just keep listening. And remember, I told you to listen for this song in April. He's thinking about changing. Oh, come on, buddy. You can do it. Hear that? He just switched to a different song altogether, and it's a different tone quality. It's really clear. And those really high notes are the ones that you hear, that you see on the sonogram way up at the top. Let's take a listen to what he can do. This was one bird at the Holden Arboretum, and he was switching out his songs, so I just stood there for 25 minutes recording all his different songs. We're not going to listen to all of them. But this is not what you heard at first, and it's not the one he switched to. He switched to yet another one. Then he switched to this one. He was running his whole repertoire. It's like he was auditioning. There was a female somewhere, I bet you. Those real high notes are him, too. He switched his song again. Then he started scolding. And then listen to what he does next. I think it's his next track where I got a scream that he does. It's really impressive. Let's see if I'm right. Isn't that amazing? That scream? And then he went right into another song. Still yet another song. So this is all the same bird, every one of those songs. When I first started listening to birdsong and trying to learn everything by ear, I had, actually it was a little notebook, and I drew lines, like staff lines, so I could write down what I heard. I teach ear training, so no big deal for me. But then I tried to look up the songs, and I couldn't find them. I had all these songs I'd written down, and finally I just got mad and I frustrated, and I just, recycled the notebook and said, so much for that. I didn't know that all those songs were probably a titmouse. There's probably a whole collection of titmouse songs that I had written down. And those real high notes you're hearing, by the way, those are like an imitation of the song, but really high. If I look at them in the sonogram, it's the same thing, but way up high. They are fascinating. And what else is going on? You're going to forget all about the titmouse when you hear this. What do you see? You see a little bit of water, a bunch of leaves on the forest floor, some trees. But listen to that. And you better listen quick. Because they don't sing for too long. Their story is they're all coming in to the wetland, to a vernal pool, and they're going to have, quite frankly, it's like an orgy. They're all going to meet. It's like they said, okay, these weather conditions, we're all going to meet, and we'll do it again next year. All of a sudden, the vernal pools or comparable wetlands are going to be just full of them, and you had no idea there were so many wood frogs. They're just all over the place. Look at this one. This one is going right after these other ones, like, oh, you get out of my way. And look how shallow the water is. This is actually in the water, so I just was taking a picture from above the water. It's quite shallow. You'll be lucky if you even see one of them the rest of the year, but this is the moment, and it doesn't last for long, like a week and a half. You're not going to have very much time, so you just keep checking, because you don't want to miss this. It's pretty exciting. When they sing, Unlike the spring peepers that have the vocal pouch under their, like on their throat, these are on the side. Just recently, like a couple years ago, is the first time I actually saw it and was able to photograph it. So this is where their pouches are, not under here. This is a female. You can see how wide she is because she has the eggs. So she's here, he's here, and he's going to fertilize the eggs. This is what just a single wood frog sounds like. Isn't it the oddest sound? This is an identifier right here, that black mask. But after that week and a half or so, they quietly return to the woods, and you won't hear another sound from them until a year later. Look how hard they are to find. And they live solitary lives. Like, I don't know how I even saw this one. So it's just that exciting moment, and it's not very long, so get out there and march. Now, it's not just the vernal pools. Like, more open, wet, sunny fields, those are good places too. Yes, indeed, this was March. Obviously, it was a very warm March. Listen, song sparrows. They start singing early, and it's just wonderful when they do. It's just, I don't know, I find it so encouraging. And they have a beautiful repertoire. Oh yes, here's one from Summit County. Another one of those bad winters. I think there's more and more of them that are actually staying, that are overwintering, because I have found even up by me, I live kind of eastern Cuyahoga County, but more north, so I'm right near the intersection of Lake and Geauga. And at the closest park to me, which is part of North Chagrin, I have found song sparrows there that have overwintered. But again, it's a little harsh. They too have a lot of different songs. They have a whole repertoire, which you may or may not know. It's not just song sparrow. It's a song sparrow and his full repertoire. They're complicated songs, but they repeat them. And then they'll change to another one of their songs, and then another one, just like the cardinals were doing, just like the titmice were doing. Here's a few sonograms. They're beautiful. They're like little works of art. Most of these songs will have some kind of fancy trill or something buzzy like this in them. They have multiple parts to them. So this song repeats. Here's a different song. He'll repeat that one. This is yet another song. These are different birds, but each bird has his own set of songs. And that's really pretty amazing to me. When I want to record them, I watch their movement. They will fly to a perch that's in their territory and sing. And then they'll fly to the next perch in their territory, another corner of it, and they'll sing. Then they'll fly to another perch. And as soon as they land, I turn on my recorder and aim the microphone because he'll sing. What he's doing is saying, this is my territory. It's here and back here and over here. So he's marking the boundaries of his territory with his songs. And while the song sparrows are singing, you might hear this depending on where you are. This is the western chorus frog. If anything, this one's even a little tinier than the spring peepers. But look at that big vocal pouch. This little thing is going to kick out a lot of sound. Here's just one song so you can hear what it sounds like. People say it sounds like running your fingers on a comb, and this is why. This is what it does. It goes up, and it also gets louder and then drops off. This shows pitch, and this one shows the rhythm. So where are these? You know what? I don't find them right by me. I don't find them in Lake County. I don't find them in Geauga County. If I go down to parts of Summit County, I might find them. I don't know if you have them in Portage or not, but maybe I should go find out. Maybe I should go look around. But if I go to Medina County, Lorain County, there'll be lots of them in those more open areas, flooded fields. They love that stuff. They have a black line through the eye. It goes about like that. There's just one, and there's some peepers in the background. If you're really lucky, you'll hear them singing with spring peepers and with wood frogs, both. You might hear all of them. You know what? Have you ever been down to the Wilderness Center? The Wilderness Center is probably not all that far from you. You just have to go west a ways. They've got a pond there that's full of all of these folks. They've got wood frogs, spring peepers, western chorus frogs, and they've got another frog I'm going to talk about in just a minute. That's a nice pond to go to. But you know, I bet you all can tell me what are the ones that would be the good hot spots for portage too. I bet Tinker's Creek State Nature Preserve should be pretty good. And I know that there's some western chorus frogs. There's a few of them at Liberty Park. So you probably know where that is in Summit, but it's right on the Summit Portage border. Okay, so I've been focused on frogs for a little bit, but don't forget the robins. They're going to be part of any spring chorus. Now think of this in terms of like an orchestra. You have different kinds of instruments, and some will play, you know, just as certain groups, and then maybe you'll have an orchestral tutti where everybody is playing at once. Think of it as like orchestration, spring orchestration, where you have different frogs, you have different birds. When I talk about the chorus returns to the stage, I'm talking about all of this. And the more I listen musically, the more impressed I am with all the different things that are going on. No, where did that come from? I didn't mean to do that. So the robins are going to start singing in March, and what you're going to hear is the rhythm of the song. Da-da-dum, ba-da-dum, 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 ba-da-dum. Let's see if I can make that play again. Da-da-dum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum. Ba-da-dum, 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 ba-da-dum. The robin rhythm is this. Da-da-dum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum. They don't sing a long flowing song. Ba-da-dum, 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 ba-da-dum. And it's that robin rhythm that is so cheerful. And when they come back and they're starting to set up their territories, that's when they're going to sing. I heard just a little bit of singing. They weren't getting serious about it yet. It's just maybe thinking about it. Mostly they're still in their big flocks. And so when I teach at the Cleveland Institute of Music, as you probably saw. When I go to campus, there's a robin that's right by the front door. Why? Because it's full of crabapple berries. They'll be all over campus, but I tell the students, when you hear the robins start to sing, then you know the spring is really getting serious. So listen for that. Listen for the robin rhythm. Well, the tour is going to take us onto a bigger marsh. And this is not just any marsh. This is Kilbuck Marsh. This is how I spend spring break. There are frogs all around my feet. I can't see them, but they're there. I'm recording actually probably brown creepers. I think it's brown creepers that I was recording up there. That's a song we have not heard yet though. And there's a lot of them. These are leopard frogs. And you have them up here. You don't have to go down to Kilbuck to find these. And at the same time as I hear them starting to sing, that's when the phoebes return and they start to sing. So for me, that's a pair. It's the phoebes, because you know how they like to be by a bridge. They like to be by the water. Of course they do. There's lots of insects that come from the water. So the phoebes and the leopard frogs are a pair for me. And this one was right there at Kilbuck Marsh, right by where I was recording the frogs. Here's a single leopard frog. So you can hear it's all these eggs that you see over here, those are not leopard frog eggs. Those are the wood frogs. By the time they start singing, the wood frogs are already done and they're heading back into the woods. So they come just a little bit after. They might overlap a little, but not a whole lot. This is the Pond Brook Conservation Area at Liberty Park, and there's a huge chorus there. Yeah, listen, sounds like a wood duck. So there's all these frogs here. Can I see them? No. They can sing underwater. How impressive is that? That they can actually sing under the water. When they're out, they'll be along trails. They'll be along grassy paths that are near the water edge. And they'll hop right into the water if you startle them. They're sometimes called grass frogs because, well, look where this one is. They're really beautiful, green with their spots. These spots, I think, are probably, it's kind of like camo because it's breaking up the green and it kind of blends in with the brown or whatever, so it makes it hard to see them. I don't often see them on land. I just see them leaping into the water. It's like, oh, there was a frog there and I missed it. But now, wait a minute. What have we here? It sounds similar, but it's a little smoother sound. Instead of being, it's more like, Look at the spots. This one's a little browner, and look how the spots are all in rows like this. Looks like someone who might be related, but a different species. And indeed, it's a pickerel frog. Here's a whole bunch of them. These sound like snarls. The leopard frogs sound like snores. I think I even probably have a blog post called Snarls and Snores that's about these two species. So these are the pickerel frogs, and they too hide really well, but if you can see one, look at how orderly their spots are. They're not all random like the leopard frog. And they still blend in really well, a little more brown, but they've got these two rows of spots, and they're often kind of opposite each other. What else do you hear? There's a robin in there. There is a red-winged blackbird, or 2 or 3 or 50. Yeah, you can tell that this is by the water just by everything else you hear. Now, as far as leopard frogs versus pickerel frogs, I don't find pickerel frogs most places, but I do find them not so far from me. I think all my photos and recordings are all from various parts of North Chagrin Reservation, which straddles the very eastern edge of Cuyahoga County and into Lake County. And I don't find leopard frogs there. I don't know if they ever are in the same areas. I'd like to find out more about them. So I have pickerel frogs. I don't have leopard frogs by me, but if I go very much outside of my immediate area, then it's leopard frogs everywhere. So that's pretty interesting. I want to find if they overlap so that I can see both and hear both, especially hear both. Okay, here's the leopard frog. That's this one. Sounds a little more like a snore, perhaps. Listen to that flicker who just came back. Here's the pickerel frog. Red-winged blackbirds, Canada goose. So I think it would be interesting to find out where the pickerel frogs are and where the leopard frogs are, and if they overlap. I don't know. That's something I hope to investigate. And finally, I am not going to hear green frogs this early, but I'll see them. They'll start appearing, but they just don't start calling right away. And I really like this picture because this one has got a stowaway right here. This is in shallow water. This is where all the wood frogs were, right in that same area. And I would typically see a few green frogs that are just starting to show up, but they're not calling. Once they do call, it's great fun. You could just listen to them and just laugh. Do you think on a spring evening when it's warm and there's all this stuff going on, you think I want to come home and grade papers? Oh, I do not. Yeah, I have to try to get it done before I go. So you may think this is the conclusion, but not quite yet. So this is what we're going to be hearing, though, really soon. And I really encourage you to get out when you can. If you can go for an evening walk, wherever that's possible, see if you can do that. But what happens when we have something like tonight? I know, you're looking at all these pictures, listening to all these sounds, so am I, and forgetting that we're going to get a coating of ice, and then we're going to get a layer of sleet on top of the ice, and then a layer of snow on top of the sleet. Because in March and even in April, we get these unpleasant surprises. And it's just kind of sad. This is me. This was April. In fact, I think it might have even been April. I think I have the date down there. It was April 10th. Here I am. I'm in Worcester. And I'm recording. I'll tell you why I was recording, by the way. It's kind of interesting. Did you know that along Route 30 is the dividing line between black-capped chickadees and Carolina chickadees? That's considered the overlap zone between the two species. I'm trying to hear the difference in the songs. Like, are they both in one place? I know if I go a little south of there, I'm going to hear just Carolinas. But right along that borderline, it could be either one. And there could be hybrids. And the hybrids could sing either song, or they could make up some stuff that's neither one. I can't encourage you enough to go to the Wilderness Center at some point, just during the spring. Make a trip down there and just listen, hear, and see what you hear. I know the bird banders get both species, but one of the naturalists in Geauga, who's just recently retired, she does bird banding, and she has actually banded Carolinas on a number of years. It's the females because they move ahead of the males. So they're already moving up here. You've got to have some in Portage if she has some in Geauga, southern Geauga County. So you may have some, and you just don't know it yet. Why? The females move ahead of the males. I wasn't going to talk about chickadees, but I can't help it. Females move ahead of the males, and they are moving at the exact rate of climate warming. There's been studies recently that really show the correlation. And the females move first. They can't move a whole lot because they're small birds, but they keep moving northward. And when they get a little farther north, they're not finding Carolina males anymore. They find black-capped males, and they say, oh, well, if this is all I have to work with. And then hybrids are created. And like I said, they can sing the song of either species or something entirely different. Look for a blog post of mine that says either Carolina chickadees or hybrid chickadees in my Listening in Nature blogspot.com. Listen for hybrid chickadees. I've posted about them there, and you can hear some of their crazy songs. Okay, so imagine that this has happened, and it's March or maybe even early April. Here's all this snow. Leaves poking out of the snow, except wait a minute, that looks like a leaf, except it's not. Look, this is one of my favorite songs of the winter, is their little calls, their delicate calls. Have you looked at the details of these tree sparrows? The rusty red cap and the black dot? And notice the bill, it's dark on the top and the bottom is yellow. Now I have to tell you that their numbers are really dropping fast, so that's a species that people who are studying these birds, just birds and habitat loss and climate change and all that, they're concerned about tree sparrows. So that makes me especially happy when I hear them. Here's what to look for. Here's the field markings that I've just mentioned. Red cap, single black dot. There's no lines coming out of that. It's just a dot. Dark, light. But if I'm lucky, I might hear this. Because just before they get ready to leave, they'll start to sing, even here, before they head back north. They're just here for the winter. But keep an ear open. You just might get a chance to hear that delicate, lovely little song. Oh, and another one who comes through that you'll hear in the spring, too, is the Fox Sparrow. They have a beautiful song, and they're not here for too long. They just pass through. But they will sometimes be singing, so listen for that, too. If you don't know what a song is, see if you can find out what the likely species are. And if you can see one, look it up on All About Birds. That's the Cornell site, and you'll get to match up the bird with its song as well as its picture. Now, they don't care. Dark-eyed juncos, they don't care if it snows. Doesn't bother them. Here's two of them, and they're singing. They can do a trill that's a little faster, a little bit slower, but that's basically what they do. Now, here's what's interesting about the juncos. Do you know that some of them are now nesting in Northeast Ohio? And they're becoming pretty common nesters. They are nesting in Lake County, Eastern Cuyahoga County, Ashtabula County, Geauga County. These birds are just naturals for the snow belt because they like things like hemlock ravines. Except as they are getting more established, they're also nesting in people's garages, in their hanging flower baskets as if they were house finches. And they are having multiple broods, like up to 3 broods. There are folks in, like around the Holden Arboretum, that are actually studying them and banding them and checking to see which birds are staying. It's really, really interesting what they're finding, that they're more and more often finding birds that are actually residents here, because we think of those as just migrants. It'll be interesting to see if there's any place in Portage where they actually are staying. So, and another thing that you could probably find on my website is some of the ones that are now year-round residents, they're doing new songs. They're doing not just the trill, but they're doing some fancier songs than that. And I was asked by one of the people who's doing the research to come record, and I did. And I think they're using my recordings for one of their programs, that the juncos are not doing just trills, that they've got some variations there in Lake and Geauga County now. Before they leave, they're going to sing a lot. They're going to chase each other all around, watch them flash their tails. They really put on quite a nice show. The ones that were here in the winter are going to leave, and then we'll see others who are a little farther south coming up on their way north. And then if you still hear one in June, well, then that is something of note. Oh, and the meadowlarks. They start singing in late March. But if you hear one that's earlier than late March, meadowlark, that was a starling. They can imitate meadowlarks. So if you hear a meadowlark singing on the next door neighbor's roof up by the chimney in February, take a look around for the starling. Now, any time from late March into early May, I don't know how it gets determined. I hope to figure that out too. That sometimes they're really early, and other times they can be considerably later. I don't know how they know what the right moment is. I'm just guessing it has to do with temperature. But look who's going to show up, and what a party that's going to be. Now, normally, you just see a toad here or there, right? And they blend in with everything. So you may not even see that they're there at all. They're solitary residents in the woods until whenever the time is right, everybody knows, and they all congregate in the pond, just like those wood frogs came to the vernal pools. All of a sudden, more toads than you ever imagined were there are suddenly filling up a pond, and they're singing, singing, singing. Now, I know technically it's called calling, but if birds are singing, why can't they be singing too? I think it's pretty musical sounding. Toad choruses are wonderful. Yet another thing to make us happy in the spring. They certainly have big vocal pouches right here. They'll be in shallow water because when they sing, they're up. Their heads are up out of the water. They don't sing under the water. Now, they don't need to be in real deep water, but they're going to head from the woods and they're going to get into the water. You'll see why in a minute. Isn't that beautiful? This is in one little pond. It wasn't even an impressive pond, but all the toads knew that if they were anywhere in that area, they were going to come here. And each toad was outdoing the other with his calls. They sound so musical in the distance. You get right up on them, they are so loud. Incredibly loud. Like that one right there. So they'll get their upper bodies up out of there so that they can inflate their vocal pouches. They're not there very long, but it's a mating frenzy. And then they all return to the woods, and you may not see them again until the following year. This is the male. They're smaller. Females are bigger. I mean, they have the eggs. I thought this one was especially ambitious, this little guy right here. Here's the eggs being released, and he's going to fertilize them as they're being released. So that's what he's doing. And here's the eggs. Keep listening. That's what I would encourage you to do. Throughout this early spring period, listen for each bird as it comes through. Listen for the ones that just passed through. Listen for the ones that have been here all along, but now they're singing because they're year-round residents. Listen for when the peepers start. And then western chorus frogs, wood frogs, you gotta be fast to catch them. And then later on, you're gonna hear the leopard frogs. And then you're gonna hear the toads. There's so much to listen to, and it's all so joyful. Even when it's still kind of brown out there, you're going to hear all this music. So to me, it's a real joyful time, and for me, it's the earliest spring that I find absolutely exciting. That's why I say it's urgent, it's compelling. I mean, think of all these frogs that are going to, or toads that are going to come into the water all at once. That's urgent stuff. So keep listening. And when I referenced my blog posts, that's the address for that. I also have my own website, which has the various programs that I do. I also have an online field guide to the singing insects of Northeast Ohio, because that's my specialty, is the songs of crickets and katydids, and I do surveys for park districts all over the region. And I've done some work in Portage, I've done a lot in Geauga, but I've been to all the counties in Northeast Ohio, and I just love doing that. This is obviously my early spring look. My fall look is going to be in a bunch of goldenrod where you can hardly even see me, because I am recording crickets and katydids in there. So go here, and when it gets to be later summer, listening to insects, just all one word, listening to insects, as in TO.com. That's my online field guide. It's got all the species that I know that are in Northeast Ohio, and I've been studying these for a while. And It's free. All this stuff is free to anybody who's interested. And in that field guide, you will have pictures, you'll have range information, habitat information, you'll have recordings, what they eat, mating behavior, all kinds of stuff. So you're welcome to go there as well. Okay, I'm done. I think that's plenty.
Yay! I'll clap for everyone else. This is not our format. We can't all clap at once.
Shall I just leave the screen up here and then
you can leave the screen up in case,
Sure.
Lisa, in case anybody needs to jot that down.
Sure.
Of course, you've got lots of comments coming in on.
Oh my God! Look at all this.
How fun! So there are some questions for you if you don't mind taking a few questions.
I don't mind at all.
So we have. This so puts me in the mood for spring. So thank you for this little bright spot this
Tonight's
evening.
the night we need this.
Yes, this is the night. Where is the red-winged blackbirds? Where are they located during the winter?
They're a little bit south of here, although there are some places where blackbirds stay for the winter, and they're going to be in marshes. Like I think you could probably find some of them at Menor Marsh. There's a place where Judy Semrock, you probably know her, where she has led hikes, she and Larry Roche, that is like PPG or something like that. It's a little southwest of here, but it's in our region. There's a big Phragmites marsh, and there's loads of blackbirds in there. They come from all over, and they roost in there during the winter. And if you go on a field trip with them, you can see them all coming in. So they'll be there in the late winter because they've been there. But otherwise, they go south, but they don't go super far. That's why they can get back in a hurry.
Yeah, Andrea mentioned PPGs in Barberton, she believes.
Thanks, that's it exactly.
Excellent. So, and Lisa, you and I talked about this a little bit before we started today. What is the global warming effect? Are you seeing any effects of climate change on the movement of birds, or when you're hearing and where you're hearing those sounds?
I'm starting to pay more attention to this and how they're going to adjust to how soon they come back. Where I really hear it, though, is the singing insects, because we have species now that we didn't used to have, and they're steadily moving north into northeast Ohio, and ones that you used to have in Summit and Portage that we did not have up by me, we've got them, and they're all the way up to the lakeshore, plotting on how they're going to get to Canada. So birds, I think we're all going to have to watch this, and I know that people from places like Cornell are doing studies on this. And you know how we have things like the backyard bird count and that kind of stuff? There's a project from Cornell called Climate Watch, and I really want to do that, where they are studying birds in, like, they'll do a month in the winter and then a month in the summer. I have one more year before I'm going to retire, and as soon as I do that, I am going to start doing all these other projects because I want to study that as well. Amphibians, I don't know. I do not know to what extent they might be moving north. So many things are. We really
so many questions.
But you know what? With birds, there are some birds that are moving north, and the ones that occur to me are white-eyed vireos. We're actually starting to find them up here more. Up at Lake Erie Bluffs, right on the lakeshore. We've had a couple of chats lately. We don't have them typically. We have birds that moved up very gradually, like we didn't used to have cardinals. We didn't used to have red-bellied woodpeckers. They move gradually from southern Ohio, but we've got ones that are moving a lot faster. Up here in the more in the snowbelt area, we've got Carolina wrens where we didn't used to have them. And in fact, Carolina wrens are becoming real common up here. And they just weren't. But winters have gotten milder. We haven't had really bad ones for a while. And those knock out the populations of the ones that try to be the pioneers. Well, the Carolina wrens are saying, hey, we're on territory. We are here. And so I find them during the winter. They're right here. Mockingbirds, that's another one that's gradually moving north too. They don't migrate either, so they have to be tough enough to do it.
Fascinating. All right, another question I have is about black-capped chickadees.
Mhm.
Other songs. Chris said, I usually don't hear the two-note song after springtime. I've heard them already this year.
Okay. Yeah, they don't sing as much afterward because it's for their territory and for their mates. So that's why we hear a lot from them in the spring, and they start kind of early. Even though they're not going to nest right away, they're probably already poking around looking for possible cavities because they definitely will be checking this out in March and April. And they'll be breeding in April, I'm sure. I think they start that soon. I think they can maybe have two broods, but then that's it. Unlike perhaps a cardinal who could have three broods easily, and they'll keep singing because they're gonna keep doing more broods.
The next question is about toads.
Yes.
How far will a toad, or a frog, travel to reach a pond or a source of water?
I don't know. I wish I had the answer to that. Um, but the wood frogs are going to be somewhere around the woods, so they probably didn't travel too far. Great tree frogs, same thing. They're later on.
Mhm.
They're more in May. They're going to come down from the trees and they're going to come into the wetland, but they're in that region. They're in
Mhm.
that immediate vicinity. I don't think the toads are going to travel that far. But that's
I
just what I've
agree.
observed. Yeah, you don't think that they're going to like cross freeways and stuff. Probably not.
Not unless they have to. Closest, the closest acceptable water body. Vernal pools are really important, though. Remember, we've got and as I was listening to some of these frog calls, we are really fortunate here in Portage County because we are really on the cusp of a few different regions, and so most of the frogs that you heard today, there are places within the county. Some are only in the north part of the county, and some are only in the southern part of the county.
How interesting.
You can hear almost all of those. I have not personally heard the pickerel frogs. However, our natural areas team, they've heard them up in the headwaters along a few spots along the headwaters trail
Hmm. Hmm.
in Portage County. So, and the rest I have heard in our parks. If you're looking for good Portage parks to visit to listen to those spring amphibian calls, Shaw Woods has the largest variety that I've heard of any of our parks. But then Dix Park, the Woods at Morgan Park, Towner's Woods Park, those are all really good places to hear
Oh, sure. That makes
species.
sense.
Now here's some technical questions for you, and some of
Okay.
what kind of recorder do you use?
I have a Tascam recorder. It's about this size. It's a little big for my hand, but it's handheld. I have a shotgun microphone that's about this long. Well, it's basically what you see right here. So that's a Sennheiser. I love this microphone, and they have just stopped making it. I don't know why. I don't know what I'm going to do because I need to stick my microphone into a bunch of blackberry thickets or something like that. And I just want to stick my whole self in there. But
I
yeah,
love
it's a Tascam recorder. It's not all that expensive. I'm a musician. I don't have a big budget. And so
Well, that was a
basically,
great segue too, Lisa. Uh,
yes.
Next question is, as a trained musician, do you find birdsong using pitch intervals we're familiar with or more random intervals?
Some of them have very distinctive intervals, and those are ones that I could actually sing back or I could play on the piano or something like that. And other times they're far more complex. Now, if you listen to Baltimore Orioles, they will sometimes have pitches that are so clear that I could write them down on staff paper. But it'll be a little harder to do with an orchard oriole because it's just too complex. And a lot of those songs have a lot of different frequencies in them. Wood thrushes, you can get the pitches, I can get the pitches, but they also have all those other little springy metallic sort of sounds as well. Can't even begin to notate those. So yeah, they're really complicated. But some
I
of them
was
will have at least parts of their songs where I could titmice, I can get da da ba da ba da. I could do that. Some of the other things they do, I couldn't, but and I do listen for pitches because it's what I do.
I was so impressed, Lisa, with that tufted titmouse that you shared. Because I've watched them for years, and they're one of my favorites to observe. Having all of those calls, all of those
Yes.
in, in one recording, how amazing!
That was one fine bird doing his whole repertoire, and I was just standing there taking it all in.
Great. I have one last question that's up here from the viewers tonight about starlings.
Mhm.
Starlings disappear for a short time in the winter. They've been back for a couple weeks. Do we know where and how far they go?
I don't know that they go all that far. They're just kind of hanging out with the other blackbirds, I think, because they seem like they all come back together. But yeah, we've only got we typically have a pair, and they nest in the same cavity in the same London plane tree on the tree lawn next door. Which
Mm.
I don't know. Your Portage. I know that in Summit they call it Devil's Strip. What do you call it in Portage County?
I'm not sure how everybody refers to that. The
Yeah, a
devil's.
little strip of grass between the sidewalk and the road.
Yes.
Well, up here they're called tree lawns.
Tree lawn. I'm good. Thanks,
It's
Holly.
like the tree
Tree
gets its
lawn.
own little lawn. And we typically have these big old London plane trees. We all just call them sycamores because that's all that we didn't know any better. We didn't know that there was the native sycamore. So there's cavities in there, and they like to nest in cavities, and they fight with the red-bellied woodpeckers, and the red-bellies wind up going to the oaks. And the first pair are back now, and they're eating the suet, but there's not too many of them. But they just showed up a couple weeks ago.
Excellent. All right. Well, there's lots of Lisa. I hope you'll take a look. There's lots of thanks and uh, compliments in the chat box. So appreciate you joining us tonight on this rainy, snowy, sleety evening and getting us all in the mood for spring. So thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
We hope to see you down in Portage again soon. We'd love to do some
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I enjoy sharing all these songs with everybody, so it's a treat for me.